Hargus commented as he shifted the bonds. They proceeded at a trot, keeping it up for 2 hours or more. Lambert knew it was about 10 o'clock when he stopped to investigate the man in the road. There was a feel in the air now that told him it was far past the turn of night. He knew about where they were in relation to the ranch by this time, for a man who lives in the open places develops his sense of direction until it serves him as a mole's in its underground tunneling. There was no talking among his conductors, no sound but the tramp of the horses in unceasing trot, the scraping of the bushes in the stirrups as they passed. Lambert's legs were drawn close to his horse's belly, his feet not in the stirrups and tied so tightly that he rode in painful rigidity. The brush caught the loose stirrups and flung them against Whetstone's sides, treatment that he resented with all the indignation of a genuine range horse. The twisting and jumping made Lambert's situation doubly uncomfortable. He longed for the end of the journey, no matter what awaited him at its conclusion. For some time Lambert had noticed a glow as of a fire directly ahead of them. It grew and sank as if being fed irregularly, or as if smoke blew before it from time to time. Presently they rounded the base of a hill and came suddenly upon the fire, burning in a gulch, as it seemed, covering a large area, sending up a vast volume of smoke. Lambert had seen smoke in this direction many times while riding fence, but could not account for it then any more than he could now for a little while as he stood facing its origin. Then he understood that this was a burning vein of lignite, such as he had seen traces of in the gorgeously colored soil in other parts of the Bad Lands, where the fires had died out and cooled long ago. These fires are peculiar to the Bad Lands, and not uncommon there, owing their origin to forest or prairie blazes which spread to the exposed veins of coal. As these broad, deep deposits of lignite lie near the surface, the fire can be seen through crevasses and fallen sections of crust. Sometimes they burn for years. At the foot of the steep bank on which Lambert and his captors stood, the crust had caved, giving the fire air to hasten its ravages. The mass of slow-moving fire glowed red and intense, covered in places by its own ashes, now sending up sudden clouds of smoke as an indraft of air livened the combustion, now smoldering in sullen dullness, throwing off a heat that made the horses draw back. Kerr drew aside on arriving at the fire, sat his horse looking at it, the light on his face. Sim Hargus pointed to the glowing pit. "There's our little private hell. What do you think of it, kid?" he said with his grunting, insulting sneer. The fire was visible only in front of them, in a jagged, irregular strip, marking the cave-in of the crust. It ranged from a yard to 10 yards across and appeared to extend on either hand a long distance. The bank on which Lambert's horse stood formed one shore of this fiery stream, which he estimated to be 4 yards or more across at that point. On the other side, a recent settling of earth had exposed the coal, which was burning brightly in a fringe of red flame. Whether the fire underlay the ground beyond that point, Lambert could not tell. "Quite a sight by night, isn't it?" said Kerr. "Covers several acres," he explained, as if answering the speculation that rose irrelevantly in the face of his pain, humiliation, and anxiety in Lambert's mind. What did it matter to him how much ground it covered, or when it began, or when it would die, when his own life was as uncertain that minute as a match flame in the wind? Why had they brought him there to show him that burning coal pit? Not out of any desire to display the natural wonders of the land. The answer was in the fact itself. Only the diabolism of the savage mind could contrive or countenance such barbarity as they had come to submit him to. "I lost several head of stock down below here a little way last winter," said Kerr. "They crowded out over the fire in the blizzard and broke through. If a man was to ride in there through ignorance, I doubt if he'd be able to get out." Kerr sat looking speculatively into the glowing pit below, the firelight red over him in strong contrast of gleam and shadow. Sim Hargus leaned to look Lambert in the face. "You said I was to consider the 2 days I gave you was up," said he. "You understood it right," Lambert told him. Hargus drew back his fist. Kerr interposed, speaking sharply. "You'll not hit a man with his arms tied while I'm around, Sim," he said. "Let him loose, then. Put him down before me on his feet." "Leave the kid alone," said Kerr in his even, provoking voice. "I think he's the kind of a boy that will take friendly advice if you come up on the right side of him." "Don't be all night about it," said Nick Hargus, from his place behind Lambert, breaking silence in a sullen voice. Kerr rode up to Lambert and took hold of his reins, stroking old Whetstone's neck as if he didn't harbor an unkind thought for either man or beast. "Just wait, Duke," he said. "You're a stranger here. The customs of this country are not the customs you're familiar with, and it's foolish, very foolish, and maybe dangerous for you to try to change things around single-handed and alone. We've used you a little rougher than I intended the boys to handle you, but you'll get over it in a little while, and we're going to let you go this time. But we're going to turn you loose with the warning once more to clear out of this country in as straight a line as you can draw, starting right now and keeping on till you're out of the state. You'll excuse us if we keep your gun. You can send me your address when you land, and I'll ship it to you. We'll have to start you off tied up, too, much as I hate to do it. You'll find some way to get loose in a little while, I guess, a man that's as resourceful and as original as you." Tom Hargus had not said a word since they left the river. Now he leaned over and peered into Lambert's face with an expression of excited malevolence, his eyes glittering in the firelight, his nostrils flaring as if he drew exhilaration with every breath. He betrayed more of their intentions than Kerr had discovered in his words, so much indeed that Lambert's heart seemed to gush its blood and fall empty and cold. Lambert forgot his throbbing head and tortured feet and hands gorged with blood to the strain of bursting below his tight-drawn bonds. The realization of his hopeless situation rushed on him. He looked round to seize even the most doubtful opening that might lead him out of their hands. There's no chance. He could not wheel his horse without hand on rein, no matter how well the willing beast obeyed the pressure of his knees while galloping in the open field. He believed they intended to kill him and throw his body in the fire. Old Nick Hargus and his son had it in their power at last to take satisfaction for the humiliation to which he had bent them. 1,000 regrets for his simplicity in falling into their trap came prickling him with their momentary torture, succeeded by wild gropings, frantic seekings for some plan to get away. He had no thought of making an appeal to them, no consideration of a surrender of his manhood by giving his promise to leave the country if they would set him free. He was afraid, as any healthy human is afraid when he stands before a danger that he can neither defend against nor assail. Sweat burst out on him, his heart labored and heaved in heavy strokes. Whatever was passing in his mind, no trace of it was betrayed in his bearing. He sat stiff and erect, the red glow of the intense fire on his face. His hat brim was pressed back as the wind had held it in his ride. The scar of Jim Wilder's knife, a shadow adding to the grim strength of his lean face. His bound arms drew his shoulders back, giving him a defiant pose. "Take him out there and head him the right way, boys," Kerr directed. Tom Hargus rode ahead, leading Whetstone by the reins. Kerr was not following. At Lambert's last sight of him, he was still looking into the fire, as if fascinated by the sight of it. 100 yards or less from the fire they stopped. Tom Hargus turned Whetstone to face back the way they had come, threw the reins over the saddle horn, rode up so close Lambert could feel his breath in his face. "You made me brush off a nigger's hat when you had to drop on me and carry a post 5 miles. That's the shoulder I carried it on." He drove his knife into Lambert's right shoulder with the words. The steel grated on bone. "I brushed a nigger off under your gun one time," said old Nick Hargus, spurring up on the other side. "Now I'll brush you a little." Lambert felt the hot streak of a knife blade in the thick muscle of his back. Almost at the same moment his horse leaped forward so suddenly that wrenched every joint in his bound, stiff body. Squealing in pain, he knew that one of them had plunged